Dajaha, welcome to the Rashi course. I thought we are gonna start off this course by exploring why we call the zodiac sign Rashi in Vedic astrology. The word Rashi describes a 1/12th portion of the zodiac. Literally, Rashi actually means a quantity, number, pile, or heap. Now, the word Rashi gives us the idea that a 1/12th portion of the zodiac is a number of things, but what things exactly? So the zodiac is a circle of 360 degrees, and it's divided into 12 Rashis that each have 30 degrees. And so a Rashi is really a number of degrees, since the Rashi is 30 degrees of arc. But Rashi is much more than that. Rashi is not just a number or quantity, it is also a pile. And so what kind of pile is it? Right? It is a pile of vargas, or the divisions that we can basically get from the main birth chart, which lie upon each other. So Brihad Parasharoha Shastra divides each Rashi into 2, 3, 4, 7, 9, 10, 12, 16, 20, 24, 27, 30, 40, 45, and 60 portions. Right? So in other words, there is the Rashi chart, and then there is 15 other charts that we actually get when we divide the Rashi into those portions, right? And each division or each chart that we get deals with one important aspect of life, such as our spouse, our married life, our parents, our real estate, and so on. And in astrology, it would be so easy if all we had to do is cut the circle into 12 parts, and let's say Mars is Mars is in the third part, right, in the third sign, and that means this, right? But life is just not so easy, wherever Mars is in a zodiac sign, that this is just gonna be the same. No, if Mars, let's say, is in the third zodiac sign, let's say Gemini, and it's in 5 degrees, that's gonna be quite different than if Mars is in 10 degrees in Gemini, for example, or in any other part of a Gemini, because it's a different part of space, right? It's in a different location. And each planet moves a little bit differently as it goes into a different location. And so a Rashi, we can say, is literally a pile of little bits of space or little places that a planet can exist in. So a Rashi is really a much deeper thing than we usually think of it. Why? Because all the Vargas are actually found in a Rashi, okay? So let's say you had like a pile of leaves, right, that you need to go through and dig through because you think maybe there is your phone there that you lost or something. And as you dig through, this pile of leaves, then you would obviously be, finding different things, right? As you stick your hand in or like that. And perhaps, the first thing you might find is an ant, right, that crawls on one of those leaves. And then as you dig further, you might find an old empty can of soda. And if you're lucky, at the bottom of, this whole pile of leaves, maybe there's your iPhone, right? But as you dig through this pile of leaves, right, you are gonna experience a lot of different things. And this is also basically the same with a Rashi, right? And a planet moving through that Rashi. As the planet moves through that Rashi, it is sort of constantly experiencing different things, okay? And we know what it exactly is by analyzing the Vargas, right? And those Vargas are going to change as the planet also changes and moves, okay, through that sign. And this is how we can see the planet in its totality, right? We cannot see everything about a planet simply by based on that 1/12th portion of the arc, right? We also need to look into those Vargas as well. And the fact that we use a Rashi and call it like that, the reason is because there's just so much more to it than what we can see on the surface. And so we need to consider the facts beyond, that sign of, 30 degrees. Now, when it comes to terminology, Rashi particularly has to do with your birth chart of 12 signs, right? We call the birth chart also the Rashi chart, right? In the Rashi chart, we say, oh, this is like Aries Rashi, or this is Taurus Rashi, and so on. But if you're looking into another Varga chart, let's say the D9, which is also called the Navamsha, then the proper terminology would be that, you would call it the Aries Navamsha there, or the Taurus Navamsha, right? You wouldn't say, oh, this is the Aries Rashi in the Navamsa, or the Taurus Rashi in the Navamsha. No, you would call it the Aries Navamsha, or that Taurus Navamsha, right? Similarly, also in the D60 as well, right? When you go into that chart and Aries is there, you wouldn't, you wouldn't say, oh, this is the D60 Rashi of Aries. No, you would say this is the Aries Shashtiyamsha, okay? Because at that point, you are actually looking at those smaller parts of space, right? That are within the main Rashi chart. But then they are those parts of that Rashi, let's say the 9th part, like in the Navamsha, or the 60th part, like in the Shashtiyamsa, okay? And so basically when we look at the Rashi chart, then we call it a Rashi chart because it's actually a chart of those piles, those 12 piles of Vargas and also degrees, right? Which are piles of, smaller increments of space that have completely different results, based on where a planet is at. And so don't expect a right answer about a question just because the planet is in a certain sign in the Rashi chart, right? It's where the planet is at exactly in that sign that plays a big part, right? So that's why we use that word Rashi actually to remind us that we have to look further into the Varga charts and not just, the 12-fold division of the zodiac space. And Parashara uses an additional 15 Vargas. So there's the Rashi chart and then 15 more. The Tajika school, which is the Persian school of astrology, that takes the Rashi chart and 11 more Vargas. So these are the different schools of astrology that realize that a planet at 5 degrees Gemini acts quite differently than a planet, let's say, at 10 degrees in Gemini. And it is through those Vargas that we know that this is true. And so the important point is really that a Rashi is a pile of Vargas, and so it cannot be separated from those Vargas.